The deeper you go underground, the more you hear things that shouldn't exist beneath a city. Story 1. Another shift. Another plunge into the Earth's gut. The sea line extension. Phase 3. We'd been eating rock and spitting concrete for months, burrowing deeper beneath the city's indifferent rumble. My name's Mark, and I've spent 20 years underground. You learn to live with the chill, the perpetual damp, the symphony of drills, and the drip, drip, drip of unseen water. You learn to trust your lights, because beyond that narrow beam, it's a black so absolute it feels like a physical thing, pressing in. But lately, something's been off. Not a machinery fault, not a water main burst. Something softer. A breath? No, impossible. The air down here is recycled, filtered, thick with the scent of ozone and wet earth. Yet sometimes, when the drills paused, when the roar of the muck wagons died down, I'd hear it. A faint sigh, like tired concrete settling, but too regular, too deep. The kind of sound your brain tries to dismiss as your own blood rushing. At first, I chalked it up to fatigue. Long shifts, the constant pressure. But then others started mentioning it. Old Man Henderson, who's seen more rock than any of us, started drawing crosses on the ventilation ducts with chalk. Said they were keeping things out. When I asked him what, he'd just shake his head, his eyes wide and ancient in the lamplight. Things that don't belong here, Mark. Things the earth forgot to bury properly. The sigh became more pronounced. Sometimes it felt like it was right behind me. A cold gust on my neck even with no draft. My headlamp, usually a comforting sentinel against the void, started to flicker more often. Not just faulty wiring, but almost responding. The shadows it cast would stretch and dance, not like ordinary shadows, but like grasping fingers from the living rock itself. One night, alone in a newly bored section, inspecting stress points, the power grid hiccuped. Everything went out. My headlamp died mid-blink. Total, absolute darkness. The kind that eats light. And that's when it wasn't a sigh anymore. It was a whisper. Low, guttural, right there. It wasn't in English, or any language I knew. But it burrowed into my skull, a scraping, wet sound that vibrated through the rock beneath my boots. And then, I felt it. A brush. Not a solid touch, but a fleeting, icy pressure against my arm, like something impossibly cold and thin had just glided past. My heart hammered against my ribs, threatening to burst. Every instinct screamed, run! But where? The tunnel was a tomb, the suffocating dark an active predator. I fumbled for my emergency light, my fingers slick with sweat. When the dim beam finally sputtered to life, it illuminated nothing but the raw, unyielding concrete. But the air was heavy, thick with something stale and ancient, like disturbed earth from a forgotten grave. And the whisper? It had receded, but it still echoed, not in the tunnel, but inside my head. We finished the sea line. The trains run now, ferrying oblivious commuters through the dark. Sometimes, I ride it for old time's sake. I stare out the window, at the blur of the tunnel lights, the concrete flashing by. And even with the rumble of the train, the chatter of passengers, I still hear it. That low, ancient sigh. And I know, with a certainty that chills me to the bone, that we didn't just build a tunnel, we woke something up, and it's still down there, listening, waiting, pressing in. Story 2. The gut rumble of the TBM was a second heartbeat down here, a constant vibration that wormed its way into your bones. 400 feet below the city, in this tight, steel-ribbed cylinder, the world outside might as well not exist. It was just us, a dozen grimy, bone-weary men, the roar of the drill, the hiss of hydraulics, and the smell of damp earth and ozone. I've been digging tunnels for 30 years, seen cave-ins, gas leaks, men lose their minds to the dark. I figured I'd seen it all. We were hitting a new seam of clay, slick and unforgiving. The TBM groaned, then stalled. That's when it started. First, it was the sound. Not the usual creaks and groans of settling earth, or the distant city rumble filtering down. This was deeper, softer, a sort of mournful sigh that seemed to come from the very rock face ahead of us, like an exhale, or an intake of breath. We all froze, headlamps cutting through the dust. Just the ground settling. Miguel, our foreman, gruffed, but his eyes darted around, lingering on the absolute consuming blackness beyond our work lights. The next shift, the anomaly persisted. Equipment started acting up, nothing major, just bizarre glitches. Pressure gauges fluctuating wildly for a few seconds, safety lights flickering then dying, only to revive moments later. It was only ever in the section we were currently boring. My gut tightened. This wasn't bad wiring. This wasn't ground shift. Then came the cold. Not the usual deep earth chill, but a biting, unnatural cold that clung to you, no matter how hard you worked. It was like standing next to an open grave in deep winter. And with the cold, a smell. Not methane, or sewage, or fresh-turned soil. This was something ancient, a scent of damp, decaying stone, mixed with something else I couldn't place. Something like old, dried blood, or forgotten fear. We started seeing things. Not clearly, never clearly. Just fleeting shadows in the periphery of the light, distortions in the heat haze from the hydraulics. A trick of the dust, or sleep deprivation, we told each other. But nobody met anyone else's eye when we said it. The sounds became clearer too. The sighing deepened into a low hum, then something more distinct. A slow, dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across rough stone, just beyond the cutting head. One night, I was checking the bore face, my own headlamp pushing back the gloom. The TBM was quiet, waiting for the next push. The hum was louder now, a low-frequency vibration that resonated in my chest. And then I heard it, right in front of me, whispering from the clay face where the TBM's teeth would bite. A single guttural word. It wasn't human. It was full of pain and rage and an ancient territorial claim. My blood ran cold. My lamp beam shook. I scrambled back, away from the bore face, away from the sound that wasn't sound, but pure malice, pressed into the very earth. We pushed through that seam, eventually. The city needs its metro lines. We drilled another 100 feet, then another. The sounds faded. The cold receded. But sometimes, when the TBM stalls, when the world outside goes quiet, and it's just the steady drip, drip, drip of water seeping through concrete, I listen. And I swear, from the deep, deep earth, I can still hear it. That low, mournful hum. And I know, with an absolute certainty that chills me to the bone, we didn't just tunnel through the earth. We woke something up, and it remembers. It's still down here, waiting. Story 3. The air down here is never clean. It's a pressurized brew of diesel exhaust, ozone from the arc welding, and the metallic stench of bentonite slurry. We were 310 feet under the city's heart, pressing the shielded face of the TBM through ancient compressed clay. Every meter we gained felt like a fight against the weight of the continent. I'm Finn. I've been digging holes for 20 years. I know the rhythm of the rock, the sweet sound of the cutter head eating granite. But 3 shifts ago, the rhythm changed. We weren't hitting solid rock. The ground monitors were screaming about an anomaly, a pocket of extreme density bordering an unnerving void. The chief engineer above ground, a nervous kid named Marcus, kept demanding we maintain the planned vertical alignment. I told him the geology wasn't reading planar, it was reading wrong. We hit it at 347. The whole shield shuddered, not with the metallic groan of impact, but with a deep liquid thud. Then, the pressure went haywire. The cutting wheel seized, and the forward chamber began filling. Not with the expected wet spoil, but something heavier. The crew went silent. The only sound was the high-pitched whine of the hydraulics fighting the stall, and a new noise. A low, resonant hum, too deep for our ears to properly register. It didn't sound like machinery. It felt like a note played deep inside a cavern, traveling through the dense clay straight into my chest cavity. "Get the pressure suits," I barked, grabbing the thermal lance. "We're going forward. We need eyes on the cutter head." The inspection chamber was a coffin of steel plates. I slid through the gasket with 2 mudmen, the lights on our helmets slicing through the thick mist. Claustrophobia isn't about being trapped. It's about knowing the sheer tonnage above you. If that seal failed, we would be compressed into pulp faster than the mud could swallow us. When we reached the cutter face, I saw why the TBM had balked. We had broken through the clay layer and into something truly massive. It wasn't rock. It was a wall of impossibly old, compacted material, blackened crystalline soil mixed with dense organic fibers. It smelled like sulfur and burnt insulation. But that wasn't the horror. The horror was the space we had punctured. The cutter head had punched a smooth, perfect hole into the black mass, and through that hole, the light of my helmet vanished immediately. It wasn't just a void. It inhaled the light, and from that absolute darkness, the metallic, humming vibration intensified. One of the mudmen, a giant from Galicia named Pablo, slowly raised a hand toward the hole. "Listen," he whispered, his voice cracking. "It's breathing." And I heard it too, a slow, staggering exhalation that made the air conditioner condensation drip simultaneously from the ceiling bolts. It was vast. It was patient. Whatever was beyond that wall wasn't geological. It was biological and slumbering. I slammed my palm against the emergency seal button. "Get the concrete, pump the grout, seal the pocket, now!" We retreated, not caring that we were breaching protocol by sealing the face without inspection. We didn't tell Marcus what we saw. We told him it was an unstable fault line. We lied easily because we knew the truth. We hadn't dug a metro tunnel. We had jarred something awake, hundreds of feet below the city, and then, in sheer animal panic, we had buried it alive again. I still ride the elevators down every morning. The pressure headache is constant now, and so is the vibration. A faint, low thrumming I feel not in my ears, but in the marrow of my bones. It's waiting for the city to settle. It's waiting for us to dig closer. And I know, sooner or later, the noise will stop being a hum and start being a roar.